Well, hello there and welcome. This is Jennifer. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I'm not making cards, but instead using my card making supplies to create 3D holiday paper craft items. I'll be creating some pumpkins, some jack-o'-lanterns, and even a snowman, all using the same die set. I really appreciate it when companies come out with products that encourage us to use our supplies for different things other than card making so we can get more use from them. I will be using a Concord and Ninth Pumpkin Builder die set today. That's what you see here. It has all these funny shape pieces, but do know that these are designed to make pumpkins, but I'm going to mention many other things you can create using these. So just stick with me, lots of ideas that I'll share with you, and they're super easy to put together. I will also be using this new Concord and Ninth Stitched Leaves card front die. Now this doesn't actually cut anything, but instead does a pierced faux stitching pattern. This is great for backgrounds, great for envelope flaps, but today I'll be using them on the walls of my pumpkin for a little added detail. Now this is Concord and Ninth's 8th birthday, so they have a great new release, and I just thought I'd show you the other products in this release. I'm not using them today, but they're worth seeing. If you want to skip ahead, you definitely can. I really like these large words that are part of the Thankful Scripty Sayings die set. In fact, I think it would be neat to put the thank you words right glued to the side of one of the pumpkins we'll be making today. But these are also definitely sized perfectly to use on a card. Concord and Ninth also has some pattern papers available. These are white on the back and then pattern on the front, 8.5 by 11, which is a great option because you can use these for card bases. I actually think the orange pattern with the little white dots would be great to create a pumpkin from. Along with the pumpkin line, there's the Concord and Ninth Playful Pumpkins stamp set and die set. Now there are lots of little dies and stamp images here that you could use to decorate the little pumpkins that you make, or you could use these for card making. Now, in addition to that pumpkin builder die set that I'll be using today, my other favorite product in this release is definitely the Blooms for You bundle. I really like this large 6x8 stamp set because there are many different greetings you can put together. You can do thank you, celebrate you, I love you. And there is a coordinating die set that you can buy together or separately that cuts that thank and you that you see there. So you can use these to create lots of different looks, either layered or one layered, really up to you. And you can see that the guide there has an example. I will definitely be using this in a video coming soon, just didn't get a chance to use it for today's. And another set in this Concord and Ninth release that is fantastic is the Celebration Squad dies. Now it's hard to see here what this is, but it's actually the shape of a person from behind. So you can do different hairdos. You can have different arms on it so that they're holding something up like a balloon or holding something up like a gift. So many different things you can put in their hands, different hairstyles you can do. You can make this wedding, so many different options. I will link below to this if you want to see some of the ideas Concord and Ninth has for this. I didn't get to use this today either, but I plan to soon. All right, now let's get back to those pumpkins. I just wanted to show you what they had in this release because it's a good one, but these pumpkins are super fun to make. The die set allows you to create 3 size pumpkins. I'm going to start with the biggest first. Now off screen, I've already die cut 6 of this funny shaped die, the largest one. I call this a pumpkin wall die. Didn't know what else to call it. I cut 3 from orange and 3 from a slightly lighter orange. I will then use this stitched card front die to add that stitch pattern to the walls of my pumpkin. You can skip this and leave it solid. You could stamp here. You could do whatever you want. The only part of these walls that we'll be showing is that kind of petal shape in the middle. The hexagon at the top and the bottom of the piece will not be showing. So you only need to stamp or use a faux stitching die in that petal shape area. Before gluing the pieces together, I definitely recommend giving a little curve to the paper so that it will come together easily and you won't accidentally get a crease where you don't want it. I do this by holding the pumpkin wall onto my desk and then just rubbing it with a bone folder as you see me doing here. It'll cause that curve very easily, doesn't take much effort at all. Okay, now let's put our pumpkin together. We're starting with the large hexagon end and putting that right there on my work surface and putting some strong adhesive here. I recommend a very strong adhesive. I like to use liquid adhesive because I can wiggle it until I have it in just the right spot. Otherwise, you could use a double-sided tape if you prefer. I will then take another one of my walls and line it up. So that hexagon there you see in the center is lined up nicely. So we're starting to form the pumpkin. Now we'll put some more glue down and add another one of our walls. Now the glue I'm using here is Gina Connect, which is my favorite strong adhesive. I trust it very much. I have it in a fine tip bottle, which makes it really easy to apply. So notice every time I'm just lining up that large hexagon shape there in the middle. As I'm doing this, you might notice this is looking kind of like a flower. If you wanted to, you could use these dies to create large flowers that could be decorative. You just cut the smaller hexagon tips off of it. Look at that, looks like a really cool flower. All right, so now we can see the bottom of our pumpkin is formed. I'm going to put something heavy on it while it dries, just to make sure it doesn't come undone. I gave that a couple minutes, and now it's time to glue the top of our pumpkin together. So this time we're lining up the small hexagons. Again, using strong adhesive, and I will start by doing two that are opposite from each other, as I'm doing here. Then we will move on to some of the side ones. After I've glued one up, like I'm doing right here, I like to then go to the pumpkin wall die cut that's opposite of the one I just glued. So this one's opposite, right across on the other side. This just forms a nicer pumpkin. Now there will be those little splits on the side of the pumpkin. That's just part of the design. You can kind of pull them in tighter if you want to, but I think it works out just perfect the way it is. All right, so now I like to put something there to hold it in place. You can hold it with your fingers, or you can take reverse tweezers like these that close on their own and clamp that on, and it'll hold it in place as it dries. All right, so while that pumpkin dries, let's create the leaf. Now there are different size leaves in the die set. I believe there are two. And these leaf dies create little score lines that allow you to put some dimension to the leaf die cut. You just need to do an accordion fold. So folding one way, then the opposite way, then the opposite way as you go across the leaf. I use a bone folder to reinforce those little fold lines, and then you'll see that you end up with a leaf with lots of dimension. Now this leaf die cut could also be used on cards or other projects too. You definitely could get a lot of life out of them. And another reminder, I'm using all cardstock today so I can create some bold projects, but you could use pattern paper, stamped paper, you could even watercolor some fun paper for all of these die cut pieces. Once my leaf is ready, I will flip it over and glue this little stem die cut right at the base of it. I like to use strong liquid adhesive and then use my reverse tweezers to kind of clamp it in place as it dries. By the way, I will link to a few different reverse tweezers that I use. You'll see me use several of them today in the video, and you can check those out below. All right, now for the top of the pumpkin. There are dies in the set to create different size tops for the pumpkin. Now I'm cutting one here from craft cardstock and just folding along those score lines. Then there will be this little flap here where I'll put some strong adhesive and adhere it to the other end of this die cut. Now you could use double-sided tape here, as I've mentioned. I just almost always use liquid adhesive because it gives me that little bit of wiggle room time so I can get it lined up just right. But you do need to give it a couple minutes to dry before moving on. These are projects that would be great to do like multiple steps at once, so while something else is drying, you can create more. All right, so once that's dry, I'm going to fold these little flaps in. See those three flaps there? I'm going to kind of fold them in a bit and then put strong adhesive onto those three little flaps. Again, Gina Connect is a great option. Then you can see that little hexagon shape die cut on my desk. That's part of the pumpkin builder set. I'm going to glue that right onto it. You can see how the hexagon lines up with the hexagon, and then put something heavy on that while it dries. Or you could just hold your hand there for a few minutes, totally up to you. Now the Pumpkin Builder die set comes with this long die that you see over on the right that cuts a strip that is perfect to make like a curly Q to put at the top of the pumpkin. You could definitely use that, but I just thought it was faster to cut thin strips, very thin strips of green cardstock, and I'll just use that instead. Either works. Now I'm taking one of those strips and wrapping it around a pencil, a paintbrush, whatever you want, and it gives it that kind of curly Q that's fun to put at the top of pumpkins. I will show you another way to do this a little bit later, but for now, this gives a nice loose kind of curlicue, but you definitely could skip it if you wanted. All right, now we have our pumpkin dry and our pumpkin topper is dry too. Now the top of the pumpkin is where we have the smaller hexagon shape, so we can add our little leaf and curlicues to this. What I like to do is just use tape runner to add the leaf and curlicues on top of that little hexagon. You could use liquid adhesive, but you'd have to wait for each to dry or they might want to move. You could also use double-sided tape if you prefer. I just didn't want to add any more bulk to it. So I'm using a little bit of tape runner. Once I have those positioned, we can take our pumpkin topper, the brown piece, put some liquid adhesive on the back of that and place it on top of the ends of those leaves and curlicues to hold them in place. And once that's dry, we have our first pumpkin complete. So this is the large size, and I added a little bit of interest to it using that faux stitching card front die with the little leaf pattern. I think next time I will also try using maybe pumpkin stamps or a pumpkin turnabout stamp to create a stamped image over each of those pumpkin wall die cuts. And you can see I alternated the wall die cuts between the darker and light orange for even more added interest. So now that I have assembled one of the bigger pumpkins, let's do the medium size. And this time I will use an embossing folder to add some texture to the walls of the pumpkin. I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cut machine along with an embossing folder from Spellbinders. This is the Puff Dotty, which is one of my most used folders. You can easily put multiple pumpkin wall die cuts in it. This is the medium size pumpkin wall die cut. So I will do this embossing folder on all 6 of our pumpkin walls. And again, I did 3 that are darker orange and 3 that are slightly lighter orange. I will again use a bone folder to add a little bit of curl to these pumpkin wall die cuts. Notice that I'm not putting so much pressure that I'm flattening this embossing. This is a very light amount of pressure. If you just pull that die cut along the edge of the bone folder as you're pressing down onto your work surface, it'll curl very easily. I'm gluing the bottom of our pumpkin together first, so that's the ends of the pumpkin wall die cuts that have the large hexagon shape. We'll start by gluing 2 together so that they stick out, as you see here, looking kind of like a bat. Now, before I start putting on the side of the pumpkin walls, I wanted to show you a trick that I like to do. I like to cut the large hexagon in half. So you end up with half of a hexagon there at the end of our wall die cut. I'm going to put glue on the back of that and line it up with the hexagon shape bottom of our pumpkin. So you'll see I'll press that in place. Then I will do the same on the opposite side of the one we just glued down. The reason I'm cutting off half of the hexagon is it keeps the base of our pumpkin from being super thick. Because these 2 halves of a hexagon there that we just glued down, they don't overlap. They just kind of meet up there in the center. So we're having less added layers on the bottom. This just makes the pumpkin, look better from the side. It is minimal. You don't have to do this. You can see the last one that we did where I didn't cut the hexagons in half turned out just fine. But I just found that this allowed the pumpkin base to form nicer, and I'll do the same thing on the top too. Totally up to you, just showing you different options. Now while that dries, we can create the top of our pumpkin. So I have die cut that funny looking shape from brown cardstock, folded in along all of the score lines, and then glued the end flaps together. Then I also can put strong liquid adhesive on these little flaps we'll fold in. Again, there are 3 of them, and glue that onto the brown die cut hexagon. Now there are different size die cuts in this set, and don't be afraid to mix and match. You could do the bigger topper on the smaller pumpkin, the smaller leaf on the bigger pumpkin. I just like that there are many options that you can do. All are included in that die set. Okay, so now for the top of our pumpkin, I start by gluing those 2 small hexagons together from opposite side pumpkin wall die cuts. Now for the other ones, I'm going to go ahead and cut each of those little hexagons in half. Just like I did on the bottom, you can skip this, but I just felt that it gave less bulk to the top and the bottom of our pumpkin. Now, as I put this together, I thought I'd tell you some things I plan to do with all the pumpkins I make. I thought it'd be fun to have a bunch of them line our fireplace mantle for a bit of decoration. Another fun thing I want to do is create some of these and put candy on the inside. So put candy in it right now before we glue it shut and give those as teacher gifts. They can kind of squeeze the pumpkin and the sides open and the candy can come out, or they could just tear or remove one of the sides of the pumpkin wall. So once that pumpkin is dry, I can go ahead and add all the toppers to it. Now you'll notice in this video, and I mentioned before, I like to use reverse tweezers. There are 3 pairs there in the screen. You definitely do not need 3. I just have bought many of them so that I could test the different ones out. They all work really well. You squeeze them and they open, and when you let go, they close. So it's nice because they serve kind of as a clamp to hold things together as they dry. If you don't have a pair of reverse tweezers, I highly recommend investing in one. It really is a personal preference on which shape. They all work really well. But here you can see I used 2 pairs to clamp that down as it dries. All right, so here we have our medium shaped pumpkin, and this one I used the embossing folder on the walls just to add that little dot texture. Now the pumpkin builder die set also creates a smaller pumpkin, and I created this one off screen in the same way as the last one, but I did not use an embossing folder on the walls. I just used regular cardstock, and you can see how cute that turned out. And here are all 3 of them together, so you can see a size comparison. I just think these would be great to create a collection. You could do a rainbow of pumpkins. So many ways you can create cute little 3D paper crafts with this die set. Now next, I thought it'd be fun to show you how to create a jack-o'-lantern from one of these pumpkins, and then we'll move on to the snowman. Now to create the triangles for the eyes of the pumpkin, I just die cut one of these hexagon shapes from the pumpkin builder die set. This is what's at the top of the pumpkin. I just cut it from black, and I will cut that into triangle pieces. I'm actually holding 2 die cuts together. So as I make these cuts, I'm creating 2 triangles. Now there are a million ways you could create triangles. I just wanted to show you an easy way to create them using this die set. Then for a mouth, I die cut a black circle. You can see it there. Then I take a slightly larger circle die and offset it. So you can see there's like that moon shape underneath. Run that through my die cut machine, and now we have a smile. I thought I'd use scissors to cut 3 little triangles off the edge of that smile shape to look like little teeth. Now, again, there are a million ways you can make little jack-o'-lantern faces to this. You could use Google eyes. You can do lots of things. I just wanted something simple that could be made with this die set and basic circle dies. So now we have a little jack-o'-lantern face that we can add to the side of any of the pumpkin sizes. I also wanted to show you a trick for creating a tighter curlicue. Cut a thin strip of cardstock and then clip the end with a pair of reverse tweezers, as you see I'm doing here. Hold that there, it'll clip on its own and hold, and then start wrapping the rest of the strip around it. And this will create a little coil, and when you let go, you have a tight curlicue. If you want one looser, you can wrap it around a pencil or paintbrush as I did earlier in the video. But this works really well because the tweezers hold it in place. All right, so after I'm done wrapping it, I can let go and look at that. Such a fun little thing to add to the top of our jack-o'-lantern, but you could definitely use this for other projects too. All right, so I put this together just like the other examples. The only thing that's different is we added the little jack-o'-lantern face to it. I think this one would be a great one to give with candy inside. Now, before I move on to the snowman, I just wanted to give you some other ideas. You could put a stamped sentiment glued to the leaf. You could do that large die cut thank you that I showed you at the beginning of this video, glued to the side of the pumpkin. You can also put things inside, as I mentioned, candy. You'd want to put that in before you glue it together though. And you can also put little gift cards in the inside. So this is another great idea for a little gift to give to someone. And remember, you can really get creative with this, use pattern papers and more. I used solid cardstock today to keep the project simple, but the sky's the limit with them. So next, I thought I would take this pumpkin builder die set and create a snowman, just to show you that you can stretch your supplies and get more from them. This is a great way to make sure you're getting value from the products you invest in. So let's make the snowman. This is actually pretty easy to do. You're going to create 3 white pumpkins. So just assembling them as I showed you earlier. You're doing 1 of each size. If you want to, you could do only 2 and just have 2 round parts to the pumpkin, but I thought the 3 parts was perfect, and it really makes for a great, pretty good size paper craft display. Now my snowman I created out of just heavyweight white cardstock, but you definitely could use white glitter paper. You could use white paper that you have stamped maybe little snowflakes on. So many different things you could do here. I wanted to go for a very simple basic design, so I used white cardstock. That's something that most of us have. Once I've created all 3 of my white pumpkins, we can glue them together. I put glue at the top of my biggest pumpkin, then put the medium one on top of that, and then the small one on top of that. I did hold this for a few minutes just to make sure that it dries nice and connected. I then added buttons to the middle section of the snowman. This is a great way to use up buttons that you may be hoarding, as I like to do also. Then for a scarf, I just cut a thin strip of felt, again, from my hoarding collection, and I glue the ends together with some strong adhesive. I will clamp that with my reverse tweezers and give it some time to dry, and I'll also cut off the excess. Now while that dries, let's create a little carrot nose, and I wanted to create it using one of the dies in the Pumpkin Builder die set. So using the small leaf die, I cut from orange cardstock, and I'm folding it right down the middle along the score line. I then will cut this into a triangle shape. You'll see me cut it right here to that center point of the leaf. Then I will square off the other end of it. So you can see our little folded triangle. I'll square off that end, and now we have like a little carrot nose. We'll glue that onto our pumpkin a little later. Now that my scarf is almost dry, I'll take the rest of my felt piece and tuck it around the scarf. So I'm tucking it behind and pulling it down, and this piece I'll glue folded over. So it looks like the scarf was kind of tied there. You could tie a knot, but it gets kind of bulky, and I feel this gives better results. But I will put lots of liquid adhesive on here. It will hold the felt nicely, and then we'll have this fun little scarf. Once it's dry, I can cut the ends of that felt just to give it a little bit of a fringe. So many ways you could decorate this. You could make the scarf really fun. I just wanted something simple. Now I'm putting glue at the base of our little triangle here, and I'll add that to our snowman along with 2 small black circle die cuts for the eyes. You could use Google eyes if you wanted to. Now for the top hat, I got a little creative. I used one of the pumpkin topper dies. You can see that die there. And I cut it twice from black cardstock. I'm gluing those 2 pieces end to end so we have a longer piece. Then I will glue the other flaps together. So basically it's the same shape as the pumpkin topper we did before. It's just wider, it's bigger. I will again fold in the little flaps. Instead of 3, this time we have 6 because we glued 2 together. I'll put glue on each of those little flaps and glue that onto a black circle die cut that I created that's about the same size as the base of this black topper that we just made. So I'll just glue that on. I put that orange cardstock behind it so you could better see it on my work surface. I will hold this here and give it some time to dry to make sure that connects. Once it's dry, you can see the top of our top hat. I also cut another black circle that's bigger. That will be the rim of our top hat. Now this one, I have to get a little more creative to glue it together. What I did is I put strong liquid adhesive right along the inside edge of that topper that we created. And I made sure I put enough liquid adhesive there that it would connect with that bigger circle that forms the rim of our hat. And again, I'll put something heavy on it while it dries. All right, so now we have our top hat, and I'll just glue that right directly onto the top tier of our little snowman, and we have our completed snowman. Now there are many things you could do with this guy, many ways to decorate him. You could put arms on him if you wanted to. I just wanted to show you a simple way you can make a snowman from that Pumpkin Builder die set. I really appreciate the dies sets that Concord and Ninth comes out with because there are so many ways you could use them. In fact, one of their most popular die sets was a Christmas tree builder die set. I will link to that video at the end if you're looking for more ways to use your paper craft supplies for these kind of 3D holiday projects. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was definitely fun to put these together. If you're interested in what I used, I have them linked below in my YouTube description. At the end here, I'll link to other related videos, and I'll link to my blog where you can find much more information and even bookmark projects and videos for future reference. Thanks for spending this time with me. We'll see you again soon, and have a great week.